when you were growing up, when you were little, you had certain things come into your life that were traumatic. Maybe you had a dog bark at you and you were now and forever afraid of dogs. I knew a guy once who was he had this phobia, this fear of frogs, because when he was little, somebody locked him in a little outbuilding and there were frogs in it. So now here he is, an adult, middle-aged adult, terrified of frogs. You know, these things have an impact on us. So let's go back and think about this from the perspective of somebody with autism, someone with Asperger syndrome, because we have very unique and different things that happen to us because, well, we're different and people treat us differently, and that creates traumatic experiences. Now, not just as children, but I've found these to be true in, throughout my high school years, teen years, adolescence, throughout my college years, throughout my young adult years, and my middle age years, and my senior years. I think that would be my entire life. Okay, at nearly 70 years. I have experienced these things, but most of them were in the early years of my life. So let's talk about some of these things that we have experienced, and you tell me if you want in the comment section if you have experienced some of these same things, and maybe you can think of some things that I missed. So let me know about that. Let others know about that as well. But number one, for lack of a better term, I call this diagnosing. Or properly, it should be misdiagnosing or misunderstanding why we do what we do or why we behave the way we behave. So you have a person who is, and you know this very well, you have a person who has Asperger syndrome, who is an Aspie, they have autism, and they come across as kind of aloof because they have this mind blindness that we talk about all the time, and they really don't know how to merge or mesh in with the social interaction that everyone else seems to be getting. Okay, people misdiagnose that because they say, oh, this guy's aloof, or this guy is dumb, or this guy is not with it, he's a nerd. They come up with terms like that. That is a diagnosis. Now, they don't think of themselves as therapists. They don't think of themselves as diagnosing you. But effectively, isn't that the same thing? They're saying, yeah, we know why you behave that way. It's because, yeah, you're weird. You're a space alien. Yeah, we got it. So there is your diagnosis. Space alien. Tack it on your wall, put it in your file, take it with you for the rest of your life. That's a misdiagnosis. I'm sorry. Now, people give us, horrible, horrible, horrible feedback. Some people do it on purpose by design because, well, some people have the social climbing thing and they just love to put others down. Well, if you're a person with Asperger syndrome, if you are autistic, you are a prime target because you're easy to put down. You're the low-hanging fruit that we talk about. So the other people will come along and, oh, look, this is a bad guy. Let's stomp all over him, and then we'll elevate ourselves just a little bit. Do some social climbing. People give us horrible feedback. Maybe if you're not doing well in school, they don't understand why you're not doing particularly well in school. They say, well, you're not trying, or you are lazy. I was listening, I'm not going to mention her name, but to a famous folk singer. I was watching her biography on YouTube, I think maybe 2 days ago. Phenomenally successful, probably multi-millionaires, but when she was in school, she did horrible. Not because she was stupid, not because she was lazy, because, she was very artistic, not just in music, but in, painting. Very good at what she did. She just wasn't interested in school. People would dismiss her as being, lazy maybe, or they considered her not too bright or intelligent. She's probably the most intelligent person in her class, even though she didn't do very well, perform very well academically. So people will diagnose you. And if you listen to that, if you accept that diagnosis, and for a little kid in particular, it's hard to miss it. And for a teenager, it may just cause confusion and cause you to steer away from social settings. But it does have an impact on us. We need to be aware of that. Number two is what I call just other people's personalities. There are some people who are just flat out toxic. I could name some names. I'm not going to because I'm just not going to. Not going to tell you why, but I'm not going to. But there are some people, not too many, but there are a few people who are so toxic that I will avoid them at all costs almost. There could be one or two exceptions, but if they are there, I won't be. It's just that simple. If they're in the room, I will not be in the room. Their personalities are just that absolutely toxic, and it's not just me, it's other people that know the same thing. And no, that's not a misdiagnosis, that's reality. Now, my wife and I were in a restaurant this afternoon. We always go to restaurants around 3 o'clock when they're not busy, and they were busier than normal, and they only had one waitress on staff. Then some guy came in later and helped her out, but there was somebody at a table, family, and there was this woman. I don't like to refer to women as Karen. I think that's a pejorative. That's a pejorative that's not pejorative, rather, that's not necessary. But she fit the bill. I mean, she flat out fit the bill. She was so obnoxious to the waiters. Didn't matter what they did it wrong, and she would call them back time and time and time again. And she was loud and obnoxious. And she didn't care if she was distracting the waiter and waitress from the other customers. She didn't care if other people heard her berate them. She just didn't care. And finally, I looked at her, and this was a woman who had gray hair. I don't know how old she was, probably in her 50s or 60s. So chances are this is the way she has been her entire life. This is just my opinion, toxic person. And I thought to myself, geez, I hope she doesn't go to church somewhere, because if she is going to church, she's probably tearing that church apart. I hope she doesn't work somewhere, because wherever she works, chances are she's got all the people at the workplace mad at each other. She is probably driving her employers crazy. There are people out there who are just toxic. Now, what happens is we allow those people to affect us. And so we are trying to determine, who are we? What is our place in life, particularly as children, as young adults. And these things will trigger trauma in our lives. And I got to tell you, the waiter and waitress in that place, they were just as nice as they could be, but you could tell they were being traumatized. One time the woman yelled out the waitress's name across the restaurant, and you could tell she turned around like, oh, geez, here we go again. People will cause trauma in other people's lives, and they don't care. They just don't care. They justify themselves. They think they're perfectly okay. And my guess is this woman has been doing this for a very long time. She's had plenty of opportunity, I would guess, to change. And what bothered me is she had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 little kids with her. And they were learning from her example. People are toxic, and they do create trauma in our lives. And people who have Asperger syndrome, who are autistic, they are, it seems, the most vulnerable of anybody when you have to deal with these people. Number 3 is what I call just social confusion. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this because we talk about it all the time on this channel. Go back and look at some of the other videos that we talked about this particular topic. But when you are in a group of people, it doesn't matter, kindergarten, preschool, high school, at the job, when you're an adult, when you're in a group of other people, you are confused because these people have an innate ability to communicate and to socialize, and you have a blindness that you just don't get it. That's confusing. And it's also traumatic. And what happens is, even more traumatic, is you are rejected because, again, you're the space alien. You're the weirdo. You're the guy who is a little bit nerdy or whatever, but you just don't belong, and you become a social liability. Nobody wants to be seen with you. Nobody wants to hang out with you. Nobody wants to be known as your friend, because if they do, they will decrease their position on the social ladder, whatever that is. They know what it is. I know that it is. I'm not sure I know what it is. Number 4 is this. Sometimes we are traumatized just by insecurity. Everybody needs to have a sense of security. That's one of the fundamental basic things of human existence. We need food, we need water, and we need shelter, and we need a sense of security. Those are the 4 basic needs of every human being. Food, water, shelter. Most people had that growing up. Some people had it really tough, but in recent decades, not so much as in like the 19th century. and before, but it was something that now we pretty much take for we just take it for granted. But what about security? What about that sense of feeling like you belong? What if you wake up every morning and say to yourself, my place is no place. I really don't have a place. If I go to school, or when I went to school, I didn't have a place. When I went to work, I didn't have a place. When I went to the family gathering, I didn't have a place. My place is no place. You just feel insecure. You're lost. You're all by yourself. You're out there wandering in the woods. And fact of the matter is, there are some people who actually do that. They go out and wander in the woods. They build a life for themselves away from civilization as far as they can get. So we need that sense of security. And if we don't have it, and people with Asperger syndrome, you may have some stories that you could tell. Share them in the comments section if you want. But you could have some stories that you could tell about how you felt insecure, where you didn't belong, and it was traumatic. And you live with that for your entire life. Number 5 rather is just thoughtless people. No, we're not necessarily talking about toxic people. We're talking about people who just don't think, or maybe they're just ignorant. They just don't know. I think that includes just about everybody, including us, because for decades I had no idea what autism was. I knew that it was because I heard the term, but I didn't know what Asperger syndrome was. I heard about it, but I really didn't realize that it was something that I had. I knew I had this disconnect socially, but I didn't know there was a word for it. I didn't know it was a diagnosis. I didn't know other people had it. I mean, I could see other people weren't as connected as maybe some others, but I didn't realize it was a thing other than just something about me that was odd. Well, I was thoughtless. So if I would encounter other people with Asperger syndrome, with autism, I wouldn't give it a thought. I would think pretty much like neurotypical people. I'd say, well, they're kind of weird, but then so am I. Maybe they're arrogant. Well, then again, maybe, I've got my problems. But I was just thoughtless. And if that's true of people with Asperger syndrome, it's probably true. And I think it is true of almost everyone else. People just don't care. People tend to be self-driven, and that's usually a good thing. Take care of yourself. And so nobody else has to take care of you. But if you run across somebody else who is struggling, maybe, if they're walking down the highway in the middle of a rainstorm, you might offer them a ride. But outside of that, people just let them go their own way, whatever. People are thoughtless. And by the way, people with Asperger syndrome, with autism, are we really everyone else's responsibility? I think not. I mean, there's some people who have severe autism that, they need some help. But most of us who are high functioning, we could use some help. But bottom line is, we need to take care of ourselves. So still, it's traumatic when we deal with thoughtless people, when we're really hurting and being left out, and other people don't even notice or don't even care, or they just pile it on. They make it even worse intentionally. They actually feel good about making other people feel bad. And that's particularly true of people with Asperger syndrome. Do you see those 2 rectangles on the screen? Let's keep talking if you want. All you got to do is click one of those 2 rectangles in the conversation. We just keep chatting. But if not, well, thank you for stopping by, and we will see you all next time.